Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and you're watching a new episode on the Wojennik TV YouTube channel. Today I would like to invite you to look at a review of a game published in 2016. It will be a miniatures game, a skirmish game published by Simon, Cool Mini or Not, which is an expansion for the Wrath of Kings system. This will be a review of the starter box Wrath of Kings Honor and Treachery Battle for Ravenwood. Now this starter was published in 2016 and it was launched thanks to a previous successful Kickstarter campaign where the core game of Wrath of Kings had been funded. This campaign was supposed to gather $50,000. In the end, the campaign ended with a smashing amount of more than $700,000. So a lot of people believed in this system, a lot of people wanted to try it, wanted to support its development, and the result were many expansions published later. One of them is the starter box of Honor and Treachery. Now in this box we will find 2 of the 5 factions present in the game, because the storyline of this system is pretty simple, it's pretty standard. We had a king who ruled over a large kingdom, but when he died his kingdom had to be split between his sons. The effect is very predictable. A war emerged, a war started, and only one of those factions can emerge victorious. Now those factions are very different one from another, and in this starter set we received 2 of them, the Goritsis and the Nazier. The Goritsis are kinfolk, resemble to tigers or oval or other cats. They are very agile, they are very fast, and they are very ferocious. On the second side of the battlefield we will find the Nazier, a noble society which really resembles the 17th century samurai society of Japan. So in this game we will find both humanoids, we will find different types of creatures, animal folk, etc. It's a fantasy world where all those races will be mixed, and this also means that each army will be very different from the others, and that's a very good thing. Now the system was created by Michael Schinnell and the edition, as I said, was published by Simon. Today I would like to show you how the elements of this starter set look like, what are the core mechanisms of Wrath of Kings, and at the end my final verdict: is it worth to acquire this starter, is it worth to invest in this Wrath of Kings system? Let's take a look at the components. Here is a sample battlefield prepared in order to play a battle of Wrath of Kings. First of all, as always, I would like to show the elements which are enclosed in the game box of Wrath of Kings, because not all that you can see is part of this starter box. Now the first and major thing, the thing that will surely interest players the most, are the miniatures enclosed in this game box. And in this game box you will find 2 opposing armies belonging to 2 opposing factions. First of all, the Nazier faction, which, as you can see, is composed of several miniatures. We have 2 specialists in our army. The first one will be Longhorn, which is, as you can see, a powerful big miniature. Then we will receive also a team composed of 6 Ashmen with long swords. They will be led by an Ashman Hagar, which will be our sole and only leader in this army. He will lead not only the Ashmen but also the 2 specialists. And the second specialist, as you can see, also a big beast, is Ratha. But Ratha is not only strong, he also possesses some supernatural powers or magical powers, which will enable him to launch some attacks at distance. The opposing army of the Nazier will be the Goritsi, and the Goritsi will have fewer miniatures, as you can see, but they will be very powerful. First of all, we receive also a specialist
this will be a Skodza skirmisher, which will be very fast, very efficient in melee. The second specialist in our army will be the powerful shield breaker with a giant axe. I believe that's the prettiest miniature in the entire set. Very appealing, very nicely done. As you can see, the miniatures are very detailed, so terrific to look at. Those miniatures were of course assembled because I had to glue them, so they were not ready to play just from the box. They needed to be firstly assembled, glued, and that's the result. We also receive a leader. This will be the Skodza Alpha. As you can see, also a powerful beast, and one team composed of three Skodza skirmishers. Yes, of course, this was not a Skodza skirmisher, this was our Scourge Hound. Sorry for the mistake. So that's it when it comes to the miniatures. I believe very appealing, very nicely done. Each and every miniature, each and every type of unit has its own card, its own unit card, and those unit cards are double-sided. On one side we will find, first of all, the defense chart, on which we will have different symbols which will be used when a unit is being attacked and hit. We also receive the drawing, so we can identify the unit on the battlefield, and 4 parameters. First of all, we receive the mobility of a unit. Secondly, the willpower. The willpower is another parameter which affects several abilities, and then we have the resilience, which informs us how tough a model is, how resilient it is to being damaged. And the final result, as you might expect, the final information are the wounds. So it's the endurance of a unit, and this shows a model's overall health. If a unit receives some damage, this parameter will be reduced. Each card is, as I said, double-sided. On the second side, we will find additional information, stats representing the rank of a model, its base, its size, its deployment zone, some special abilities, the type of unit, information about additional actions which a unit will be able to perform. And when it comes to the leaders, we also receive some additional leader parameters, some special command abilities. Those can be Inspire or Training. Inspire are abilities activated when units are being led, are being activated during an activation, while Training is a capacity that each and every unit in the army has, as long as this unit is its army commander. Apart from the cards, which, as you can see, are also very pretty, very easy to be used, to interpret, we receive some additional components. We receive a set of 10-sided dice, which will be used in combat or to determine initiative. We receive some wound tokens, which will be used to track wounds, as I explained earlier. And finally, we will also receive some terrain features, for instance, a pond, a hedge. We will receive walls, we will receive a statue. Each of those elements has an information if it can be passed, what is its size, because those will influence, for instance, line of tracing, line of sight. Of course, those elements can be used on the battlefield, but as in all miniature games, you can construct your battlefield using from some three-dimensional elements like houses or sculptures, statues, etc. And I believe that this sort of battlefield with some real rocks is much more appealing to players than only flat elements. A nice addition are also the two drawers and the two rulers, because those are rulers with inches. Maybe not something very important for American players, but European players who are using rulings with centimeters, well, that's a nice addition. I believe that most wargamers, most miniature players have some ways to measure distance using inches, but it's always a nice addition to include such an element in a wargaming game. The last elements enclosed in the box are the short rules. Those are only quick start rules, as you can see on the first page. Those rules explain us how to read the information on the unit cards, then how to play the game, so how a game round looks like, how the activations are being taken, how combat works, etc. But those are very simple, very straightforward rules. It's just the basic core of the rules of the entire system. The second document is an information about a tutorial scenario which can be played when the armies are already assembled. This scenario tells us what is the starting morale for each force, what is the leadership, what are the motivations, the setup, the terrain rules and the special rules. Now I strongly suggest you to take a look at the full rules or at the advanced rules, which can be found easily on the internet. Those rules are much more interesting than the basic ones. They explain some terms used in gameplay, different types of attacks. They explain also how to interpret the defense chart, because all the symbols in this defense chart have a special meaning. Then how to use leaders, how to decide who will be your army commander, and then how gameplay works while using additional rules. Those rules are more interesting than the basic ones, because you do receive some generic actions additionally, you receive additional information governing morale, how to create some scenarios, and in my opinion the most interesting aspect of those rules are the army's motivations, because what I really like in Wrath of Kings is the fact that each and every army during each and every battle can possess a different type of motivation. For instance, the Goritsi can choose between a motivation belonging to the intrigue or the treachery family, and inside those two families, for instance treachery, we receive several types of motivations. As you can see, we will be able to choose between capture prisoners, assassinate, steal intel, and all those motivations will work differently. They will influence the type of units starting the game, or additional counters used in the game, additional ways to attribute points, or additional goals or objective our army will try to achieve during a battle. Very nice addition. And that's pretty it when it comes to the elements enclosed in the box of honor and treachery. Now let's check out how the rules look like, the basic rules, how a game round and a game turn of Wrath of Kings looks like. A game of Wrath of Kings begins not on the battlefield. It begins when you choose the scenario, you choose the scenario type, and when you prepare your army. Because this is a skirmish game, this is a miniatures game, and as in every miniature game, you will construct your own army, you will choose the forces which you want to use during a battle. Now the advanced rules tell you how to prepare a game, how to choose a different game type. You can choose a skirmish game, a battle game, a patrol game, and what number and types of units you can use in each of those scenario types. So you construct your army, you prepare your army, and then you prepare the battlefield alongside your opponent. When it is done, the players roll a die in order to determine who will deploy his first unit at first. Each unit has on the backside of its card an information about its deployment zone. In the middle of the battlefield we have the no man's land, then we have the deployment zone D, C, B and A. And so if a unit has a deployment zone of B, it will be placed somewhere near the edge of the battlefield. Some units will start near the no man's land, so they will be they will be immediately launched into a contact with opposing forces, some scouts or other type of elite units. But the majority of them will start in a relative distance from the no man's land, so we will have to first of all approach to our enemy in order to engage him. Now, after placing our troops, we can begin playing. How to win in Wrath of Kings? So what are the objectives of each player? Each army has a certain number of morale points. Now, those points are calculated at the game's beginning by adding all the miniatures in your army and by dividing this number by 3. We obtain a number which indicates the starting morale of each army. To this amount, we add also all the ranks of our leaders present in the army, and this is our final morale of our army. The objective of the game is to reduce this morale, so the morale of your opposing army, to 0. This can be done by killing opposing miniatures, because destroying each set of 3 miniatures reduces the morale of an army by 1. Also, by killing a leader, you reduce the army's morale by the number of rank points that this unit has. Some additional rules can create additional rules how to gain or lose morale during battles, and those rules will be very often associated to your army's motivations. So while choosing a special motivation, there can be additional rules which will, for instance, say that if you kill an enemy's specialist which had been marked at the game's beginning, you will reduce the opposing army's morale by an additional 1 point. So sometimes during battles you won't have to kill all the opposing miniatures, all the opposing creatures which are part of your opponent's army. You can win by reducing the number of morale points of this army using some other subtle tools. Now, after deploying those armies, after choosing your army's motivation, we can begin playing. We first of all choose the initiative. We determine the initiative by rolling a 10-sided die 1 more time, and of course the side who rolls higher has the initiative. A game of Wrath of Kings is played in a series of rounds composed of players' turns. During each round, each player will have a certain number of activations. The initiative player has the possibility to activate a single unit or to make a group activation, a combined activation. A single activation means that we choose one of our miniatures which had not been activated yet during this turn, and we can perform an action and move with such a unit. After doing so, such a unit is spent, so you cannot use it during the same turn in order to activate it 1 more time. You have to wait to another round. After activating a group or a unit, the turn passes to your opponent, who has the same opportunity. Then the initiative switches back to the first player, who again chooses one of his units to perform an action and move. If one of the players runs out of units, he did activate all of his units, or he passed, because he can also pass and he can choose a unit and do nothing with it. The initiative switches 1 more but last time to your opponent, who has 1 more activation to do. So in the contrast to many other skirmish games, not every unit on the battlefield will be always activated during a round. It can happen that in some armies, some units will remain unactivated because you didn't get the chance to activate them due to some quick activations by your opponent. This will happen especially if one of the players decides to use group combined activations. Now, combined activations are initiated thanks to a command capability of one of your leaders. If you have a leader and if you have some units in its command radius, you can activate more than one miniatures at a time. In order to do so, first of all, those activated units have to be in the command radius of a leader, which in general is 6 inches, but which can also be increased thanks to additional capabilities, or when you have a commanding leader who commands all units in your army. Secondly, you can activate only an amount of miniatures which is equal to your leadership value, and this leadership value is always determined at the game's beginning. It is very often also written in the special rules governing a scenario. Thirdly and finally, you can activate only units which have the same trait. So for instance, if you want to activate some Ashman units, they all will have to possess the same trait, which will be the Ashman trait. You cannot activate, for instance, Longhorn because he doesn't have a special trait, so you cannot activate Ashmans alongside Longhorn. You will have to activate them separately, but it's absolutely legal to activate, for instance, 4 of your Ashman right here. Now, how such an activation looks like? You have 2 things which you can do during such an activation. You can move and you can perform an action, but you can decide to do them in any order in which you want. So you can first move, then perform an action, or decide to perform an action and then to move. Movement is really simple because you just look at the unit's card, you verify the mobility of such a unit. That's the maximum number of inches that such a unit can move. So in this case it would be 7 inches. If you happen to have an obstacle in front of you, you have to contour it by choosing a path around it in straight lines. So for instance, here you will move a little bit closer because you have to run around this obstacle. Now, after moving or before moving, if you decide to switch the order, you can also perform an action. And those actions are, for instance, sprinting. You can run to a distance of up to 4 additional inches, so you can even increase the number of inches that you can move during a turn thanks to this action. You can also activate some special actions which are written on the back side of a unit, because some units, especially the specialists, will have some additional actions which can be made during a unit's activation. And finally, you can launch an attack. Launching an attack requires a unit to be in direct contact with its target, so those units have to be next one to the other. And in such a situation, a melee can occur. But of course, some units also can launch attacks at a certain distance. For instance, Rathor can launch an attack at a distance of up to 8 inches, which is indicated on his unit card. After declaring an attack, we use a number of dice indicated on the card, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. We roll the die and we compare them to the defense chart of the attacked unit. Now, those symbols have, of course, a special meaning. Those can be blocks, those can be also hits. Those can be critical hits, those can be even magical backlash, meaning that an attack can be returned against against the attacker, etc., etc. In general, if you score a hit, you have to compare the number of hits to the endurance of such a unit, to its resilience. If the number of hits is equal or equals this parameter, a wound is the attacked unit receives a wound, and so it receives a token which indicates that the unit suffered a wound. If the number of wounds equals or exceeds the damage of a unit, it is removed from the battlefield, and it is possible to reduce the number of morale points of an army in which such a unit belonged. We keep on activating units in such a way, so moving, attacking, performing special actions, and at the end we end the round, we make a new roll for initiative, and we replay a new round using the same rules. And that's pretty it when it comes to the basic rules governing Wrath of Kings. Of course, there are some additional rules, but I won't be explaining them right now. I would rather like to pass to a conclusion and to tell you what I think about this game. Is it worth acquiring? Did I have fun while playing it?
Wrath of Kings, Honor and Treachery, the Battle for Ravenwood. This is a game which I really wanted to try for a long time, but for several reasons I delayed this moment up until now. And I must say I strongly regret it, because this is really a fine game and I really enjoyed it. But to be precise, I would like first of all to, like always, first of all clear what are the strong points of this title, and then also to point out the ones which might be the weaker points. And I would like traditionally begin with the strong points, so by the things that I really liked in this title. First of all, I really like the fact that the factions present in this starter box are very much different one from the other. Now, as I said, this is only the starter box, so I cannot judge the whole system by this starter box. But if the other factions also work very differently from those two ones, I must say that this is a very strong point of the whole system. Because if I were to judge this system based on this expansion, I would say it's really good. Those two factions, the Nazier and the Goritsi, work very differently. The Nazier, the noble Nazier, are very good in teamwork. The Ashmen, led by their Ashman Hagar, are really strong opponents. They are more numerous on the battlefield and they are better organized, but their opponents are much more agile, quick, and they are much more powerful. So the army of Goritsi is in a numerical inferiority, but they are not in a lost position against the Nazier. So both armies work very differently, and I enjoyed it a lot. The second thing that I really like are the rules, because the rules in this expansion are extremely simple. I had almost the feeling they are too simple. So I downloaded the core rules of the whole system in order to upgrade those rules which are included in this expansion. I would strongly recommend you to do it also. While playing with those rules, we really have the feeling that they are very straightforward. You make an action, you move, and you repeat the same thing with an overactivated model. But it is a great game in this way that it's very easy to grasp, it's very easy to be learned, but the game is much more complex underneath, beneath those rules, because the rules are one thing and they are really straightforward, but then you have the unit cards on which you have additional actions, special capabilities, different types of attacks, and this is the place where this game really shines. You have a lot of options during gameplay, and those options will be related to those additional capabilities or powers included in the game on the cards. And that's a brilliant idea. That's a great thing to do. I really prefer games in which we have this diversity beneath the rules. The rules are really pretty straightforward, and then you can upgrade those rules using additional components. I like this philosophy of design. Now, what I really like also in the system is its dynamics. It's a very dynamical game. The battles are bloody, are fast. I like it a lot because I'm not a huge fan of mini games in which we place a sharpshooter somewhere on a roof and we just shoot during 1 hour trying to kill anyone who sticks their head from a cover somewhere on the other side of the battlefield. Here, the majority of the units will have to advance, will have to enter into melee in order to wound or kill their opponents. And I like this confrontational character of the battle. So the game will be really fast to play, it will be extremely bloody, it will be also extremely interesting. I really like the fact that there is this balancing system inside this game, because I like the activation system in which one of the sides who doesn't have any models just gives the initiative to the other side, and this side has only one final activation and the round ends. That's a good idea because thanks to it, Wrath of Kings is not a game in which we will have very long turns, rounds, in which we will have very long time of play. It is also a factor which additionally increases the tactical aspect of this game, because it really promotes the side who uses in the most optimal way their leaders. Leaders will help us to activate more than one model during a single activation, and if we place those leaders in the optimal space, we will be able to more rapidly activate more models. Not only it will enable us to act first compared to our opponent, it will also use our models much quicker, and so it increases the chance that the opponent will be unable to activate all of his own models during this round. So this balancing factor is, in my opinion, a very nice addition, because as I said, not only it promotes the side who uses better the leaders, it also helps to balance the game when the two sides become much more when they lose models. So if a side lost, for instance, 3 models, the other none, the side with the lesser number of models still has chances of winning, because the number of activations will be the same as at the game's start. So one of the sides will not overwhelm their opponent having more models, and that's really fine. What I really like in the system is also the fact that you won't be tossing dozens of dice once at a time, at once. You will be using 3-4 dice at once, not dozens as in many war games, as in many miniature games. I like this fact because I know some players who dislike strongly dice. I know players who do not want to play games in which you throw a lot of dice. Here the number of dice is just correct. It's not too big to be a factor which will scare some players to try this game. The combat system is pretty straightforward. You just toss those dice and you verify the defense chart. Very simple. What I really like, and what I especially like in this game, and what I believe is, in my opinion, the best thing in this system, are the motivations. This is a fantastic addition to each war game, each miniatures game, and Wrath of Kings is one of the few in which such a mechanism exists. Not only we have very different armies, we also have very different motivations of those armies. So even while using only the models of this core starter box, you will always have different battles, not only because you will place the models differently, not only because the battlefield will look differently, but also because the motivations, which will create some special rules during gameplay, will be different at each time. And the fact that each side has 6 motivations each means that the cases, the situations where both sides will secretly choose the same motivation will be pretty much rare. Of course, they can happen. That this increases additionally replayability, and it creates additional depth, it adds additional special rules to each battle. I loved it. I think it's the best mechanism in this system. So what in my opinion are the weaker points of Wrath of Kings, if there are any? Well, the first one is totally subjective, and it's only my opinion. I know that some of the fans of miniature games will just laugh hearing it. Now, it is the fact that in order to play Wrath of Kings, you have to assemble the minis. They are not ready to play, and if we ask a casual board gamer, are you ready to separate the different parts of the units and to assemble them, will you do it? Well, the majority of casual board gamers will say, no, I want to have a game in which I can open the box and just play the game. And I'm not surprised, because me too, as a person who has a family, has a daytime work, has its own YouTube channel, time is my most precious resource. And I do not want to spend a lot of time assembling a game, preparing a game to play. I just want to play it. Then I want to review it and want to publish my movie. So, as I said, it's totally subjective. Some people love minis. Some people buy games only because they have minis, which they will be able to assemble, paint, additionally create some battlefields, store them, etc. But it's a question of preference. If you're a casual board gamer, if you're looking for a skirmish game, Wrath of Kings might be problematic because you will have to assemble those minis at first. Of course, as I said, totally subjective thing. The second thing, which deserves to be mentioned in my opinion, is the fact that this is only a starter. This is only a game in which you will find a dozen miniatures. I said that each battle will be very different, and I confirm it. It's my opinion. I think it's a game with huge replayability, but despite this fact, it is still only a starter box. At some point, you will reach a wall. You will reach a point at which you will have to ask yourself a question. Do I want to invest in this system? Do I want to acquire additional models? Do I want really to invest my time and my money into this system? Or do I keep just the starter box and play the very similar battles from time to time? And in my opinion, Wrath of Kings is a really interesting system. It's a system which deserves its place in the wargaming society, in the wargaming world. But is it a system which will be sufficiently interesting, sufficiently different than others, especially for casual board gamers? Here I have a little doubt. Of course, it's also a question of preference. It's a question of what you want to play, if the setting appeals to you, if you like the armies, if you like the diversity, if you like the rules. If you do, you should invest your time, because Wrath of Kings, as I said, is a really interesting system, very dynamic, with huge replayability options and very interesting to play. Having said that, I believe that Wrath of Kings, this special core box, so Honor and Treachery, the Battle of Ravenwood, is a nice starter for people who want to try the system. If you do, I believe that you will almost certainly take a look at the price or the availability of other products in this system. And I invite you to do this because I personally had real fun playing this game, and I will definitely check the other expansions only if I have the opportunity to do so. This was a review of Wrath of Kings, Honor and Treachery, The Battle for Ravenwood from Cool Mini or Not. Take a look at our other reviews. We also have some unboxings on our channel. Take also a look at our Instagram account where you can find several picture shots, where you can find several photos of different games. Take also a look at our Facebook account, and I hope you will revisit our channel in some time. Have a fantastic day and see you next time.